Mike.
So, as I said, apologies for first bringing you here on a Saturday and then keeping you waiting. But I know the press release has not yet been given to you. Some minor changes have been made. So that will reach you more shortly. But we thought that we were here. And Mr. Bhatt is on his way. So we thought we will start because you invariably have other questions as well, apart from the press release. So we are happy to do that so that we can make up some of the lost time. So over to you. We don't have Mr. Hariharan today. Yes, so Sangeeta, are you going to do the honors? Come. You have a mic? Yeah.
यूजुअली आप ये कहते हैं कि जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं लॉन्ग टर्म में उनको इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाहिए, लेकिन अगर आप म्यूचुअल फंड को छोड़ दें तो और ऐसे कौन से ऐसे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो आइडेंटिफाई किए जा सकते हैं या आपकी नज़र में होने चाहिए? क्योंकि आईपीओज़ की जब बात आती है तो एक ये लॉजिक होता है कि कंपनी के ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड का आइडिया नहीं है, तो फिर वो कहाँ लगाएं पैसे? और वाकई में अगर आप लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टर चाहते हैं तो क्या म्यूचुअल फंड के ही भरोसे उन्हें रहना होगा या और कोई रास्ते सोचे जा सकते हैं?
नहीं, बिल्कुल। हमारे यहाँ देखिए बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, तो मैं ये कहूँगी कि सबसे पहले तो आईपीओ में हमारा ये कहना रहा है और हम फिर से कहते हैं कि जो प्राइस डिस्कवरी मैकेनिज़्म है वो इतना परफेक्ट नहीं रहता है। तो अगर जो इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर को ख़रीदना होता है तो उसको बड़े तौर पे ख़रीदना है, फर्स्ट करो उसको 100 करोड़ 200 करोड़ का माल ख़रीदना है, तो वो सेकेंडरी मार्केट में उसके लिए पॉसिबल नहीं होता है, इम्पैक्ट कॉस्ट बहुत ज़्यादा होता है। लेकिन जो रिटेल इन्वेस्टर है आपके और मेरे जैसे, उसको तो कुछ ही शेयर खरीदने, तो उसके लिए यही स्ट्रैटेजी बेटर रहती है कि वो आईपीओ को आने दें, प्राइस को सेटल होने दें, एक आध क्वार्टर देखें रिजल्ट्स आ रहे हैं और उसके बाद देखें कि अगर इस कंपनी में पोटेंशियल है, इसकी इंडस्ट्री ऐसी है, ग्रोथ है, तो वो अपनी डिसीजन लेके वो सेकेंडरी मार्केट में आए। ऐसा ज़रूरी नहीं है, क्योंकि उनका ऑर्डर साइज़ बहुत छोटा है, ऐसी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है कि वो नेसेसरीली आईपीओ में ही आए। जहाँ तक सेकेंडरी मार्केट का सवाल है, ऐसे हमारे बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टर्स हैं जो कि लॉन्ग टर्म इक्विटी होल्ड करते हैं। आज के दिन में अगर आप देखें जो मिक्स है शेयर होल्डिंग का, कि जो ट्रेडिशनल है, हमारे प्रमोटर्स हैं उनकी होल्डिंग है, फिर एफपीआईज है, डोमेस्टिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं, रिटेल है, उसमें रिटेल का शेयर जो है एक्चुअली बढ़ा है। ऐसे इन्वेस्टर्स बहुत हैं जो कि शेयर्स खरीदते हैं और उनको लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए रखते हैं। वो स्ट्रैटेजी कहीं नहीं गई। उनको खुद डाइवर्सिफिकेशन करना है या उनको कुछ ही स्टॉक्स पसंद हैं और वो वही होल्ड करना चाहते हैं, वो उनकी डिसीजन रहती है, लेकिन वो लॉन्ग टर्म रखते हैं और रख सकते हैं। दूसरी बात, जहाँ पे हमारा पीएमएस आता है, पोर्टफोलियो मैनेजमेंट सर्विसेज, तो वहाँ पे जिनका पोर्टफोलियो बड़ा होता है, 50 लाख के ऊपर होता है, तो उनको पोर्टफोलियो मैनेजमेंट सर्विसेज के द्वारा ऐसी बहुत सारी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ मिलती हैं जहाँ पे अलग अलग टाइप की अप्रोचेज़ होती हैं इन्वेस्टमेंट में। जो म्यूचुअल फंड्स है वो एक सेट पैटर्न में आते हैं, क्योंकि स्पेसिफिक टाइप्स ऑफ म्यूचुअल स्कीम्स आर परमिटेड एंड यू नो देयर इज़ अ रिस्ट्रिक्शन ऑन द नंबर ऑफ म्यूचुअल फंड स्कीम्स, लेकिन पीएमएस में ऐसे कोई रिस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है। तो वो अपने हिसाब से जो अप्रोच उनको पसंद है वो भी लॉन्ग टर्म होल्डर्स के तौर पे रहते हैं। तो और अगर उनको बॉन्ड्स खरीदने हैं तो बॉन्ड्स वो बहुत आसानी से होल्ड टू मैच्योरिटी कर सकते हैं, ताकि उनको कोई दिक्कत ही ना हो कि अगर मार्केट ऊपर नीचे जा रहा है, मार्क टू मार्केट हो रहा है, उनको दिक्कत ही नहीं है, वो तो मैच्योरिटी तक होल्ड करने वाले हैं। अगर आप हमारे रीट्स एंड इनविट्स देखें, एक्चुअली रीट्स एंड इनविट्स जो हमने साइज़ है यूनिट का उसको रिड्यूस किया। क्यों? क्योंकि ये जो प्रोडक्ट्स हैं ये एक ऐसा प्रोडक्ट है जो इन्वेस्टर को इन्फ्लेशन प्रूफ इनकम आगे जाके दे सकता है। तो अगर आपने रीट में इन्वेस्ट किया, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इनविट में इन्वेस्ट किया, ये लॉन्ग टर्म एसेट्स होते हैं और ये तो खास करके इनमें ये खूबी होती है कि इनका जो ऑपरेटिंग इनकम है वो आगे बढ़ के बढ़ता है, तो वो इन्फ्लेशन थोड़ी बहुत प्रूफिंग हो जाती है जो दूसरे एसेट्स में गारंटी नहीं होती। सो मैं तो कहती हूँ हमारे यहाँ बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो कि आप लॉन्ग टर्म होल्ड कर सकते हैं. आपको नेसेसरीली F&O ट्रेडिंग करने की बिल्कुल ज़रूरत नहीं है.
अगला सवाल F&O ट्रेडिंग को लेकर ही है.
Let's move on to somebody else.
I just had one question. First of all, happy Saturday to everyone. Just one question on the IPO market itself. Now, just the last week we saw tremendous response, multi-fold subscription. I want to understand, is there a thought behind allowing a green shoe option also in IPO market? Assuming if a promoter says they want to raise a particular amount, but the appetite from the market is a lot more than that, then if they want to, change the amount that they want to raise, could they be allowed? I mean, as a suggestion. And the second thing, of course, again, there are 5-6 IPOs in the previous week. What I want to understand is that, do you also look at, because the pressure that comes on registrar and the various stakeholders, to sort of limit the number of IPOs in a certain period of time, so that none of the stakeholders come under a lot of pressure with respect to the issues?
So I will take the second question first of crowding of issues. I don't think that the regulator should intervene in that, because then the question of who comes first, who comes later, and markets can turn very suddenly. अचानक कुछ global event हो गया, आपका जो मौका था पैसा रेस करने का वो अचानक निकल जा सकता है, and then certainly it would be inappropriate that SEBI had some role to play in saying whether you should come or not come at what time. So that is not there. However, there is a natural check and balance in the market, because finally there is a need to collect that money. So the investment bankers in any case make that assessment that if there is too much of crowding in one place, and depending on how much money flow is expected, वो अपनी planning खुद करते हैं और वो उस हिसाब से अपने clients को advise करते हैं. As far as the capacity of the institutions to really handle this kind of a load, I think so far we have not witnessed too much of a problem. And I think that given the streamlining of processes that we had done, at the time of doing T+3, it was actually stress tested. So at the RTA ends, at the bankers to the issue, a lot of stress testing was done that in that time frame, will you be able to actually execute? So like I said, हम कुछ data के बिना नहीं करते हैं, तो हमने पूरा back test किया था कि ये हो सकता है. So I don't think that there is a problem, but at the end of the day, the market forces operate to ease things off. In terms of green shoe for equity, this has been deliberated in the past. There is a conceptual issue and there is a practical issue. The practical issue, of course, is that, for issuers to say that they had a failed issue is very embarrassing. And so also for the investment bankers. And so they would always like to sort of pitch it a little bit lower, and depending on, the response, then they would like the flexibility to increase it. That's on the practical side. On the conceptual side, the question is, if an investor is expecting a certain level of dilution, see, unlike debt, this is equity, you're diluting the shareholder by issuing more capital. Company तो वही की वही है. अब आपने capital ज़्यादा issue कर दिया, तो आपका dividend per share तो कम ही होगा, earning तो उतना ही है. So there is a certain dilution effect of exercising a possible green shoe option, which may or may not be desirable. So you came saying, I want to do 100 crores of issue or 200 crores of issue. The market has assumed that that's the level of dilution. Now you say, I want to double the dilution. That may not be appropriate. So that is what has been debated in the past.
Ma'am, two questions. So last year, last week we saw nearly 4 IPOs closing, and if you look at the kind of money that got blocked in the bank accounts, roughly around 80,000 crores which have been done. Do you think that this market is now big enough to manage multiple issues of multiple thousands of crores at the same time over a period? Had it been 5-6 years?
Proof of the pudding, आप खुद ही बता रहे हैं, and isn't it a wonderful thing?
Yes, it is. That's why I wanted your views, because maybe 5 years back, had we spoken about this, people would have been very skeptical about whether the market can manage that kind of flows.
No, so that's what I'm saying. We are extremely proud of the technology stack that Indian capital markets have. And this is a part of that entire technology stack, the whole ASBA mechanism, the whole mechanism. That's why I said when we moved to T+3 for listing, it was all back tested and stress tested. So we are very, very proud of the entire ecosystem to be able to handle all this. So having said that, you know, in an off chance, sometimes things can go wrong, and which is why there are mechanisms to deal with those, you know, exceptional circumstances and the complaints and all of that. But one measure of how efficient the system is that we, as you know, we have a mechanism for retaining 1% of the issue amount to deal with any complaints which come. The utilization of that 1% has been extremely low, which means that there are hardly any complaints. So, you know, we are actually deliberating as to, you know, is there a need to review that? Should it be 1%? Should it be less? Because the system has become so efficient thanks to the technology of all our ecosystem players.
Because
one question on IPO, since we are on IPO. So we had issue this week, Tata Technologies, which came in, the pricing came in at 20% higher than the placement that happened about a month ago. So while it's not in the purview of SEBI to dictate pricing, that will be very aggressive, I'll understand. But in terms of, you know, pricing something at 20%, which is a high number, within 1 month, what kind of, you know, how does SEBI view this kind of pricing? What kind of additional disclosure or measure would you think of to address a situation like this?
So, was the disclosure required of this?
No, it was in public domain, right? I mean, the fact that
I'm asking a genuine question. No, I know that for non-profit making entities, all this is mandatory disclosure. For a profit making, also there is a mandatory disclosure that last, what was the placement last, etc. That same
disclosure is there. Disclosure.
So, Mahalakshmi, once the disclosure is there, it's a free market. You know, if people feel that this is overvalued, then the market will correct. Then you can come in at that time. So, from our perspective, disclosure is what is important. And if that disclosure is made suitably, then the market has all the information necessary to make an informed decision.
But there's no...
Ma'am, the press release is out. So, press release is out, so can we...
Hello, ma'am. Ankur Mishra from ET Now. Ma'am, since we have the press release now, I mean, can we talk about today's board
Of course
meeting?
we can.
Yes, ma'am. The first thing which, of course, is not there in the press release is delisting norms. So I want to ask, was it taken into consideration, and what is the reason it was not approved?
Yeah. So it was discussed in the board meeting. Very happy to report that the commitment to using data for policy making is now, there's such a strong commitment that the board guided us that since the number of delisting applications, even over taking a long period of 5 years, has been pretty small, and therefore the data set is pretty limited. To draw very significant conclusions from that may be difficult, and therefore the board has guided us to go back and do certain further examination of certain data and do certain further consultation with certain stakeholders so that we have a better sense of this, since the data set was actually extremely limited. That is the reason that it was not done this time.
So, ma'am, just to follow up, will this now take, let's say, a decent amount of time by the time you have data and you analyze it?
We will do that. We will do that.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
one more.
And because we had a
consultation
similar
paper or-
situation for mutual funds as well on the TER,
Yes.
where the data set was re-looked at. And so do we have a timeline when such thing happens, how much time it take to bring it back?
So, no. So, what the board generally guides us is on saying whether more data and more consultation is required and the nature of that, so what are the things that the board members would like to look at? That's the guidance they give us, and then we go out there and do it. So, similarly, as I've said before, in the case of mutual funds, the original proposal was never co-created with industry, which is our normal practice, but that was not done because it was a price-sensitive proposal in the market, because many of our mutual funds are listed entities. As a result, a lot of the work which in the normal course we would take 3, 4, 5 months to really do co-creation never happened at that stage. So now that whole process is going through, And that whole process of co-creation data, there's a lot of back and forth because as you know, data can be sliced and diced in many ways and we have to look at it from every angle before we take a decision. So that is generally there is no specific. It's when we reach a good conclusion in terms of we are satisfied that we have the answers for all the questions, then we proceed.
Will it have another consultation paper or final norms will be approved, just like mutual fund norms?
So it depends. Once the data, so it depends on what the additional data throws up. So if the additional data that is thrown up is supportive of the original proposal, then that can be taken forward. If the new data shows that no, there is a different perspective and we need to review, then we will review. As I said, we are very committed to data. It's not what is your opinion, my opinion. It's what is the data telling us.
For delistings, there were, various other approaches. So do you think all need to be addressed at once, or we can have like a piecemeal approach where you can, for instance, Holdco? That was an interesting suggestion. So
yeah, you're very right. There were 4 or 5 different distinct pieces in the whole consultation paper, but I think the view taken was that let's take a comprehensive look at it with more information, more data, more feedback.
On the
Index
providers.
Just one second.
would you like to explain the agenda items and then we can put in?
Yes, why not?
Yeah.
Okay, let's finish this one, then I'll do that. Yes.
Siddhant Mishra from Financial Express. Ma'am, just wanted to point out, over the last few weeks and months, the regulator has been very vocal about how the rising number of people in F&O trading is a very concerning thing. So, are you planning to bring in any regulation to put a check on that? Because it's definitely a worrying trend. But how do you stop it from happening, rather than just warn people?
I think, let me put it this way, that we need to, as a regulator, we have 2 tasks. One is we need to make sure that there is no or minimal systemic risk in the entire ecosystem. Now, given our margining mechanism and given that we collect margins from the clients themselves and we have peak intraday margin as well, we think that the ecosystem is well protected. So from an ecosystem perspective, is the regulator anxious or worried about it? The answer is no. However, at an individual level, what we have expressed is that at an individual level, investors are losing money. And therefore, it is from the investor interest point of view that we are wondering as to why they are continuing to do this trading when they keep losing money, and that when it is very evident that they will keep losing money because that's what the data shows. So first of all, to clarify, from a systemic point of view, we do not think there is any risk. We think we are a very well protected market. From an individual perspective, our view is that it is our duty to warn the investors, and after that it is really their free choice on what they would like to do. So you would like me to take you through? All right. So the first proposal that was approved in the board today was to bring about greater flexibility in the framework for social stock exchange. So as you know, this is a relatively new product in our market, and after we had notified the regulations, there has been a lot of discussion and interaction with all stakeholders, meaning the non-profit organizations, the donor organizations, the exchanges themselves, the outreach entities like NABARD and SEBI. And in the course of all of that interaction, it was determined that at this early stage, we needed certain relaxations in the framework. So what are those relaxations that we have given? Is that the total issue size that they can come with has been reduced from 1 crore to 50 lakhs. So as you know, we recently had one issue where they came in and they have collected almost 2 crores, 1.8 crores, that is on the social stock exchange, the same, 0 coupon, 0 principal instrument. But we feel that for larger number of non-profits to come in, perhaps we need to drop it to 50 lakh. Equally on the investor side, the original number was 2 lakh, right? So we felt that maybe perhaps a little more informed investor should come in, but then we got the feedback that many people want to make smaller level of donation, and especially if they want to donate to 4 or 5 different people, then 2 lakh becomes too large a number, and therefore we've reduced that to 10,000. The third is more in the context of comfort and the approach to how we want the disclosures and the audit, so to speak, to be conducted. And the thing that we agreed with the feedback was that unlike financial accounts, which have a certain audit quality to them, here the way in which social impact is measured and assessed is of a different flavor, and therefore we should really change the terminology from saying that a social auditor is required to saying a social impact assessor is required. Of course, the terms of reference of that assessor remain the same, but to bring a sort of, I would say, more clearer articulation of what is it that we intend that person to actually do. The next point was to facilitate for nonprofits who were facing challenges in terms of their disclosure in the document, in the listing document, on their past work. So again, we got the feedback and accepted that the framework that we had given, or the format we had given, was proving challenging to them. So we said, look, whatever framework you have been using in the past, you disclose as per that. However, there are 3 metrics, which is number of beneficiaries, cost per beneficiary, and administrative overhead. These items are very core, so this you disclose in your document. Lastly, we have made more entities, non-profit entities, to be eligible under various sections of the Income Tax Act, so that again will facilitate possibly new entities coming in. The second approval that the board gave, and this is something that, if you recollect, in principle approval had been given by the board, I think in March or June, and again some more data and some more analysis and some more consultation with other regulators was required, and that was now completed. So now the regulatory framework has been approved, and basically what will happen is that SEBI will identify a set of significant indices which are there and which are used in the securities market. And this regulatory framework which we have will cover this set of significant indices, and the regulatory framework itself will be such that it will be broadly on the lines of the IOSCO principles which are currently articulated in this area. So that's on index providers. Then we have another, this was again a consultation paper that we'd had out for some time, which was to facilitate small and medium REITs to come in, because our existing REITs are all large in size. They are 500 crores and above. And a need was felt that there are people who want to participate in and offer smaller sized REITs. And therefore, we felt that that is an existing need in the market, and perhaps we should permit that. So we have now relaxed the limit, but we've created this new category because there are certain other, what shall I say, risk factors which have been built into this small and medium REIT structure. So with 50 crore, now you can actually set up a small or medium REIT. And this, we hope, will expand the market in a very significant way for fractional ownership of real estate. The structure that was approved covers a number of areas, including what is the structure of such a REIT itself in the form of a trust, units, etc. The migration of existing structures, because there are people who are offering this product in the market today. How can they migrate into our system? What are the obligations of the investment manager who manages this, including their net worth, experience, their unit holding, etc. And all of this is really now encapsulated in the new regulation which we will bring to facilitate the growth of this segment through small and medium REITs. Then we have the AIF regulation, where 2 proposals have been approved to basically facilitate ease of compliance and also simultaneously to strengthen the investor protection. And this is in terms of making that all the investments of the AIFs should be held in demat form, And as you are aware, even the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has recently issued a directive to say that private limited companies, public companies who are private, unlisted, should come in and get dematerialized. So therefore, in line with that, after September 2024, these investments will need to be made in dematerialized form. For the existing investments, they have been exempted, so they've been grandfathered, except in 2 cases. One, where the investee company in any case is mandated under the law to dematerialize, or where the AIFs, along with other SEBI registered intermediaries, have controlling interest in the company, and therefore they can ensure that the dematerialization happens. Further, there has been, in consultation with the industry, this was feedback that we received from the industry as part of our consultation process. It was felt that there need to be certain exemptions. For instance, we have a concept called liquidation schemes, which are expected to wind up, quickly. Those schemes where the tenure has already ended, or which are already in the extended tenure from the, from their existing stated terminal date of the fund. So there is no point in asking them to now dematerialize all the investments, so they've been given an exemption. The second aspect is in respect of appointment of custodian. So the AIFs, right now, all Cat 3 AIFs and the Cat 1 and Cat 2 AIFs who had a corpus of more than 500 crores were anyway required to keep all their holdings in through a custodian. So now this requirement is being extended to all the AIFs. And again, in terms of part of our consultation process, we've also collected information and data to see that this should not be a very onerous requirement on the industry. And what we have found is that really, the additional cost to the AIF is like under 90,000 rupees per annum for such services, custodial services. So it's really not going to be onerous for the schemes to offer this. So these were the proposals that were approved in the board today. Happy to take questions.
Ma'am, on the social stock exchange front, while you have eased the regulations for more people to come in, do you think that ATG of Income Tax Act, which gives them exemption, should be looked at so that social stock exchange can pick up in a big way?
Kamlesh, would you like to take that?
See, the person who is coming to the social stock exchange, he can be ATG approved or he may not be ATG approved. But if he has got ATG approval, so the investors who are buying this zero coupon and zero principal product, they will get ATG benefit. I mean, that is clear. So I don't think there is any stumbling block so far that particular part is concerned. But largely, if you see the way government is, moving, is that the new scheme which is already there for the individual taxpayers, the government is encouraging new scheme. More and more reliefs is being given in the new scheme, and people are shifting from old scheme to the new scheme. And the new scheme, you don't have any incentive, ATC, ATG, ATL, nothing is there. But if somebody wants to remain in the old scheme and the person who is in the social stock exchange has got ATG approval, then the investor will be entitled to ATG approval.
I'm talking from an incentivization point of view, where there could be a push to more NGOs coming out with these kind of instruments on the stock exchange, rather than private deals which happen, and there are lots of, even being in from an income tax, how money gets circulated through NGOs and benefits are taken. So is there do you think there should be a measure from the government's point of view on this?
To do what?
To reduce the ATG or push all the NGOs who are ATG to move to stock exchange for?
Oh, I think that might be a little too draconian. I think there are certain, there's a certain readiness that the sector has to have in order to be able to comply with the disclosure requirements, ongoing disclosure requirements, the assessment that is done. And it would perhaps be inappropriate to stifle the whole NGO sector by sort of forcing them to come here. It's a voluntary thing, just like you can have listed companies, unlisted companies. You can have NPOs who are listed, unlisted. I think it would be inappropriate.
Also, if you can give us a framework for index providers, what exactly are we looking at from an ISO principle? Whether it should be transparency of how you do it, or what kind of information that should be put out?
Amarjit, would you help us through that?
Essentially, this regulatory regime that we will put in place is based on ISO principles or financial benchmarks. So it will have transparency, quality of index, the accountability of index providers, and conflict of interest, governance related issues. So all those aspects will be covered. They will be drawing from the ISO principles.
Ma'am, tell us this significant indices, will it be linked to the assets that these indices track? And I mean, how does it change from the earlier proposal where everybody, where any index where an Indian invested had to register? How? I mean, will that?
So you're right that there is, and it goes back to the discussion on what is the purpose of this regulation. So the purpose of this regulation, if you see, is that India is now following in the global trend where there is a lot more passive investment happening. So once an index is there, then money just follows that index, right? And this is globally the trend. Very large sums of money are following indices, and the similar is starting to happen in India. Now, if that is the case, then it becomes very important that the governance around the creation of those indices is looked at and is regulated, so that there is, as we said, conflict of interest issues and governance issues, that you cannot randomly just include some company in the index, take out somebody from the index at your whim and fancy. There has to be a due process and a governance structure around it. So this becomes more and more important when more and more funds are following that index. So if there is an index which doesn't have a following, okay? So for instance, you may be aware that in our stock exchanges, when we approve certain index trading, we have a criteria of success factor. After 6 months or 12 months, something like that, we assess whether there are enough people trading in that index, because if they are not, and we call them orphan indices, then they are very vulnerable to manipulation, because if the volume is very thin, there can be significant room for manipulation. So then such indices are removed from there. So what really the implication is that where is it that we need to think about the investor protection is where there is a significant sum of money going into or following that index. So that is the threshold that we will use.
But are we differentiating domestic money? Because a lot of these prominent foreign indices do not have any domestic sort of investors. Like for instance, MSCI EM, which is a very large index, but doesn't necessarily have any local index.
Yeah,
local
that
funds.
we had clarified, I think, in the consultation paper, that if it is anyway not being followed by domestic investors, it is not within our purview at all, whether significant or otherwise, because what is our mandate? Our mandate is protection of the Indian investor.
No, but
so we will look at AUM in the Indian context.
But these guys influence of money flow into Indian markets. Like any changes that happen to these indices impacts.
No, that's okay. But that there is somebody sitting over there where that investor is worrying about it. So we cannot have extraterritorial jurisdiction. So this is concerning our investors where we have this.
Can I just add to that? So if there is a product, if there is an index which is constructed on Indian securities which are listed in the Indian securities market, and that index is used by Indian investors, then of course we'll have a say.
So both conditions have to be.
Yeah. So that is the guiding principle. The usage by Indian investors and the construction done on the Indian securities.
So we'll notify that shortly.
And if you can once again explain how this AIF change impacts public unlisted companies? How does it link to AI? This government diktat of dematting.
So what it means is that from September 24 onwards, if an AIF has to invest in an unlisted company, they can only list in dematted shares. So right now they have the freedom to hold physical shares, but MC has also said that you must demat. So we are also saying you must demat, and so AIFs cannot hold physical shares if they are investing after that.
Thank you, ma'am. One question on the SM REITs, not MSM REITs. We have written that migration and all, but will the migration be mandatory or not?
No. So it is entirely optional. So right now there are a large number of people who are operating under a company structure, and that's, they are free to do that, and there is nothing which is going to mandate them to come here. If they wish to come into the REIT structure, they are free to come. If they wish to continue to operate in a company structure, that's up to them.
What will be the merits of for them to come on through this route?
So the advantage that they will have, and we've received very positive comments on this consultation paper, is that once they become part of our ecosystem, then, for instance, brokers can sell them, investment advisors will recommend on them, some analyst will say something about it, PMS will take it up, tomorrow somebody, I don't know, some AI. No, first from the people who are the people who are running these schemes. So the benefit to them is that they get a much wider stage on which to operate and for this whole business to grow. And also to have the credibility that and the comfort and trust, as Mr. Bhatia is saying, that the investors will have, saying that I have recourse to, grievance redressal, these people are well regulated, there's some regulator looking at it. So as compared to the unregulated sector, there will be a greater level of trust and faith amongst the investors.
So basically there's a market for it. You can enter, you can exit, there's an NAV, there's a price for it.
So will the entry point be, currently the entry points are very high.
500.
So entry point for investors, the minimum ticket value that they invest, will that be, you have mentioned in the minimum subscription. So will that be from the current, will that come down?
Yes. So right now, since it's at an early stage, we have put in the minimum subscription. How many lakhs is that? 2 lakhs? 10 lakhs? 10 lakhs. So, and that was also in consultation with the industry, because right now their customer base is roughly at that level. So they were quite comfortable. Over time, as we want to retailize it more and we get more and more comfortable with the whole system, we can consider reducing it as well.
And any consideration on their suggestions about the sponsor holdings, minimum sponsor holdings in the same?
So that we'll be notifying. So, but the belief that somebody who is in the saddle and managing public money needs to have skin in the game, I think that principle we continue to believe in and we uphold, because it's in the interest of the investor. That what is good for the investor should be good for the investment, for the manager as well. So that will be there, but the exact percentage, etc., and the glide path, etc., will be notified.
Just one more question. On the allowing NRIs and OCIs investment going beyond 50% aggregate investments, was there any consultation on, discussion on the same thing? Any reviews on that, and any thoughts on the same?
So that is a matter which covers the domain of multiple regulators, and therefore there needs to be a convergence of thought of multiple regulators on that issue. So therefore there is no I would say notification expected on that front at the moment.
Ma'am,
A couple of questions. First,
our markets will soon touch 4 trillion, and there are only 3 other countries which are in that space. So, as a regulator of this large ecosystem, in recent SEBI submission to the Supreme Court that the regulatory architecture will now be sort of strengthened. So, anything that you would like to say around how we have, SEBI as a regulator of such a large ecosystem, any regulatory changes that are needed? And the architecture needs to be strengthened or anything on that.
Nothing to say today on that issue.
Ma'am, a couple
ये तो मतलब blue sky thinking वाला सवाल हो गया. nothing on this right now.
I have a couple of questions. First thing I want to understand at this point, as you see it, on the point of regulations around ultimate beneficiary, would you say objectively that there is more tightening which is required in terms of disclosure to the last man, or it's good where it is? One thing separately I wanted to understand, there were consideration on a high risk category as far as mutual fund is concerned. What are your thoughts on that? How far?
So on the first one, this proposal which we had approved, I think only in June, Anand? June? So I think it's very early days. I mean, I know we are a very dynamic regulator, but we are only in November. So I think for the moment we are good. Life is dynamic, things evolve, there are learnings along the way. But this was just done in June, so we're not contemplating anything at the moment. In respect of what you call high-risk mutual funds, I think I would like to reword it. I think AMFI did come out with a clarification on that. So this is, in a way, not the most appropriate description of this. I think what the regulatory intent and the consultation was about was to say that there is feedback from the market on two counts. One is to say that there is informal PMS going on, which is below the 50 lakh threshold. And that is, in a sense, informal and camouflaged PMS. So if there is a need in the market, investors are feeling that need, should the regulator respond to that need? Number one. Number two, in terms of our entire range of asset classes, we have this, currently we have 3 points in the scale of fund management. One is mutual funds, which is meant to be a retail product, and as we know, the regulator is very happy that this has become the instrument for inclusion, and people are coming in with their SIPs even at 500 rupees a month, and this is, what is going to be, according to us, a very high growth area going forward. Then you have the PMS, where there is relatively, compared to mutual funds, more flexibility in terms of managing the portfolio. And then you have AIFs, which have much more flexibility. So we have 3 points in this spectrum and this continuum. And we felt that possibly there is a need for a 4th point, somewhere between the mutual fund and the PMS. What form that takes, what will be its contours, we have not yet decided. The whole idea is at a conceptual stage, very early conceptual stage, to say we need more points in this continuum, and we will deliberate with a lot of the market participants to see, maybe it's a totally new asset class. We don't know. Maybe we will define something completely new. So, like you're seeing, we have done for the small and medium REITs, where we felt that there is a need, below that 500 crore number. Like that, we will come and see that what is it that we need to do.
Yes, ma'am. Hello. I had a question on the index providers framework. So right now, of course, the details will come later, I'm sure, in the circular. But when you talk about accountability, governance, in how the index providers go, but will that also cover the changes they make in the criteria? For instance, a few months ago, we saw the demerger incident happening, and we had an unlisted company's shares in the index for almost in Nifty 50 for some number of days, for 2 weeks or so, and that in some people wondered whether that was an appropriate thing to happen. That you had shares of a company in the index, which on its own would not have met the criteria for being in the index, and it was there for around 2-3 weeks.
So, if you see the way the ISCO principles are drafted, the intention of the regulator is not to be prescriptive in terms of what they can or cannot do. It is to define the governance process around how they do it. So in short, we will not prescribe what they do, we will prescribe how they do it. And this is very similar to, if you see, a lot of our regulation, let's say for instance listed companies. We don't tell a listed company what you can do, what you cannot do. We say you disclose this and you follow this governance process. Go to your audit committee, go to your nom-rem committee, go to this, do majority of minority. It's a governance process that we stipulate and disclosure that we stipulate. We never prescribe what is to be done. So similarly, here it will not be prescriptive on what is to be done. We have no intention of getting into their methodology. But whatever they do, there has to be disclosure and there has to be governance.
नमस्कार मैम, जीवन भावसार फ्रॉम आकाशवाणी। मैम, अभी मार्केट में दो चीज़ें लोगों कॉमन इन्वेस्टर में फेवरेट है, एक तो आईपीओ और दूसरा एफएनओ। आईपीओ में लोग पैसे लगाते हैं, जितना आईपीओ का साइज है उससे 70, 80, 200, 300, 400 गुना उसमें पैसे लगते, बाद में वो पैसे वापस आते हैं। लेकिन ये चीज़ एफएनओ में नहीं होती है। तो इन दोनों प्रोडक्ट्स के बारे में कॉमन इन्वेस्टर में कुछ अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करने के लिए सेबी की कोई योजना है कि, या फिर आईपीओ के सब्सक्रिप्शन पर रिस्ट्रिक्शंस लगाने का कोई विचार?
देखिए, रिस्ट्रिक्शंस का तो हमें कभी भी विचार नहीं आता है, क्योंकि मार्केट है, इट इज़ अ फ्री मार्केट, इट इज़ अ फ्री चॉइस। लेकिन पहली बात तो ये है कि वो पैसा कभी जाता नहीं है और इसलिए वो वापस नहीं आता है। वो आप ही के सेविंग्स अकाउंट में रहता है और वहाँ पे 4% इंटरेस्ट कमाता है। सो ये सबसे बड़ी बात है कि आज के दिन में अगर आप देखें, जैसे कि जो नंबर बताए गए थे, वो पूरा जो बेनिफिट है इंटरेस्ट का वो इन्वेस्टर के हाथ में ही रहता है। इशुअर को या बैंकर को वो फ़ायदा नहीं रहता है। सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। अब बाकी जो एलोकेशन होता है वो तो एलोकेशन के रूल से हिसाब से होता है। अब बाकी रही बात एफएनओ में, वो मैंने ऑलरेडी एक थोड़ी सी चर्चा की थी कि हमारा जो काम है वो इन्वेस्टर को चेतावनी देने का है कि देखिए इसमें इस तरह से होता है। तो जिस तरह से हमने एफएनओ में ये रिसर्च किया है, उसी तरह से हम अब इंट्राडे ट्रेडिंग कैश सेगमेंट में भी वो रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, उसी टाइप का रिसर्च कर रहे हैं। वो भी हमारी रिपोर्ट आएगी जब वो पूरी तरह से कंप्लीट हो जाएगी। तो हमारा यही काम है कि हम इन्वेस्टर को सही इन्फॉर्मेशन देते रहें, जिसके बेसिस पे वो एक इन्फॉर्म्ड इन्वेस्टर बने और वो इस हिसाब से करें। अब आप देख रहे हैं कि पहले तो वो रिसर्च को ही मीडिया में काफ़ी विजिबिलिटी मिली, लोगों ने बहुत पहचाना, सोशल मीडिया में बहुत पहचान हुई। उसके बाद जो बड़े ब्रोकर्स हैं वो पॉप अप करते हैं। तो एट द पॉइंट ऑफ ट्रेड इससे ज़्यादा बेहतर क्या चीज़ हो सकती है? और वही मैं कहती हूँ कि हमारा टेक्नोलॉजी स्टैक जो है, इंडिया का मार्केट का टेक्नोलॉजी स्टैक आप देखें तो ब्रोकर एट द पॉइंट ऑफ ट्रेड वो रिस्क फैक्टर उसको फ्लैश कर रहे हैं कि देखिए इसमें ये दिक्कत आपको आ सकती है। उसके बाद इट्स अ फ्री चॉइस।
मैम, ऑन द आईपीओ का
है, आप जिस तरह से तो डर या चिंता जो सेबी की है वो वॉल्यूम को लेकर रहती है या फिर जो नुकसान की जो लिमिट है उसको लेके? क्योंकि ये भी एक्सचेंजेस हाल के दिनों में ही कहा कि ओवरऑल जो 1 लाख से ज़्यादा लॉस हो रहा है उसका तो परसेंटेज बहुत कम है, बाकी ज़्यादातर जो 80% जिनको लॉसेज हो रहा है वो तो 1 लाख से कम वाले ही है। तो सेबी की चिंता किस फ्रंट पे ज़्यादा होती है?
देखिए, हमारी चिंता नहीं है, हम सिर्फ यही सोचते हैं इन्वेस्टर के हित में कि देखिए आप लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट करिए, आपको फ़ायदा होगा, आप इन्फ्लेशन को बीट कर पाएंगे, आपको आगे जाके अपने जो फाइनेंशियल नीड्स हैं उनको आप पूरा कर पाएंगे। तो ये जो ट्रेडिंग है और एफएनओ में ट्रेडिंग है उसमें ज़्यादातर घाटा ही होता है। अब किसी को 10,000 का घाटा हुआ, किसी को 5 लाख का हुआ, एवरेज निकलता है वही 1 लाख। तो हमें जैसे कि मैंने कहा, मार्केट सिस्टम और इकोसिस्टम में बिल्कुल कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, वी आर वेरी वेल प्रोटेक्टेड। लेकिन वी ओनली फील फॉर द इन्वेस्टर कि अगर उनका पैसा जा रहा है, डूब रहा है, तो हमें उसमें वी फील बैड फॉर द इन्वेस्टर, दैट इज ऑल, इट्स वेरी सिंपल।
Ma'am, on the IPO valuation issue, you had spoken in the past that if a issuer is raising the price, then he should justify it in the RHP, why that price is, how this price is arrived at, and that should be transparent enough. But do you think that is happening? Because it's not happening at least in the RHP. Second thing is that in the RHP we see statement that the statements like the issue is priced at 30 times the face value of the company. But that's not the parameter which the markets go with, right? Means if the face value is 10 rupees and you're saying 30 times, then you're basically saying price of the IPO is 300 and also, but that's not the face value. So can something be done to justify how that valuation has been arrived at? Because management don't give answers to that, because they claim that the bankers are the one who are putting up the valuation, and bankers don't answer that question.
So I must admit, SEBI is not allowed to invest. So मुझे सदियां हो गई IPO में invest किए और document देखे.
आप करते थे क्या?
So मुझे frankly याद नहीं है. लेकिन अगर ये ऐसा है कि price justification is being given through some meaningless English, so we will address that. So Mr. Bhatt, we will have a review. We should have a review. You can't just say just anything. It must make sense. Right? We will look into it.
And the second question is on the IPO expenses. We've seen irrational expenses being quoted in a recent IPO as part of the quarterly result. In the notes, it came that we have spent 110 crores on IPO expenses. It's 5.6% of the entire IPO size, but it's a huge amount of IPO expenses or retail money which has been spent on IPO expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So can we have some kind of guidelines on how you arrive at that IPO expenses?
Is there any regulation on disclosure?
Regulation around how much fees we can charge. Yeah.
There's no cap, but my recollection as an issuer is that we used to say 2.5% or something like that, 2% something, and we used to always be under that, is my recollection. Again, I would only say that our view is that disclosure is important. If the disclosure is not there, we should look into it, and we should make sure that there's a disclosure, so that people can, at that time itself, and many of you are also commentators on these things, so you can also highlight that. But beyond that, I would say that at the moment, have we thought about saying that there should be a cap on fees? We haven't thought about it. We should look at the data, see if there's something egregious happening. I don't know. But to be honest, at this point in time, we feel that this is more a market-determined, matter. And if it appears that there is something fishy going on in that context, of course, we will examine. So if in the name of issue expenses, something else is happening, that is certainly a matter of investigation and examination.
I wanted to ask you on proxy advisory firms. So we have actually noticed that whenever there is a corporate battle going on, even in the past and even in the current times, we see proxy advisory firms taking sides of, say, company A or company B, whichever suits them or whatever is being instructed to them, instead of coming out with an independent report on what they really think about that particular situation or on the company, rather than, taking sides. So what exactly is SEBI's view on these, and how are they supposed to be, what is their role when these kind of situations come? Because if they pick up a particular topic and they just give out a report on that, rather than coming out with a very comprehensive view on the company or on the situation, we don't see those kind of things happening at all. We see them actually taking sides of whichever suits them or whatever is convenient to them, rather than coming out with a comprehensive report on the
Do you subscribe to their reports?
So we get reports.
No, I'm saying because they have a revenue model. So my understanding is that their recommendations are often made public, but the detailed report is a subscription. So I feel sure, because I have seen quite a few of the reports, and I find that they have very well reasoned articulation of why they are making what recommendation, but that's in the detailed report. So if you subscribe, contribute to their revenue, you will have access to that report.
No, actually it's not on basically the report I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whenever there is a corporate battle happening. Say for example, company A and company B is having certain issues.
The question, are you talking about some board resolution or you are talking about something else?
I'm talking about a situation where, two parties are fighting with each other, and instead of coming out with a report on, say, the company, they pick up a certain issue targeting the, say, company X or an individual.
No.
And
Are you
come out
saying,
with the
I'm not clear. So maybe we can
the
take
thing
this
is-
offline, because maybe
Yeah.
you have something in mind which I'm not able to connect to. So we can take it offline. My understanding is very simple, that in respect of their principal function is that they publish their recommendations on resolutions that are being brought to the AGMs. And for that, some or many of them publish their recommendations but not their full report, because that's their revenue model. And that when you actually look at their detailed report, which you can buy for a subscription, there is actually very extensive justification and analysis of what they do. Beyond that, if there is something, happy to discuss offline.
Ma'am, one question, and this is what you also spoke about in your annual report. With respect to the change in the F&O inclusion and exclusion framework, I just want to understand, because that annual report spoke beyond this very little about how this would happen. Could you help us understand what's in your mind when you talk about changes in the framework of F&O inclusion and exclusion? Would this be just like Nifty 50 inclusion or index inclusions, where you just, the moment you hit the criteria, you include it in the next review or whatever? What's in your mind?
So this is, I would say, one of the most complex data analysis that we have done in SEBI. And we've examined it from, I don't know, Anant and I spent many hours. Hamara bada sa boardroom hai, and that detailed Excel sheet, we both go right up to the screen and we are looking here, there, isko karo, isko filter karo, aise karo, reverse this, sort on this. And no, why don't you have this parameter? So it's been one of the most complex analytics that we have undertaken. It has taken us time because of this. And I would say we're still not at a place where we are, completely, comfortable with whatever is emerging. And every time we have a meeting on this, we think of two more things that we want to see. So it's taking a bit longer because of our, as I said, the rigor of data is very important to us, and these are very important decisions, so therefore we are taking them carefully. So perhaps we'll need some more time to be able to complete our data analytics and then take a look at it.
मैम रूमर वेरिफिकेशन की जो नियम है अभी तो आपने पोस्टपोन कर दिए हैं, तो जब भी भविष्य में वो लागू होंगे तो क्या जो अभी मौजूदा प्रारूप है उसी में लागू होंगे? क्या अब की स्थिति में आपको थोड़ा बहुत आपका स्टैंड चेंज हो रहा है, क्योंकि इट कैन बी डबल एजेड स्वॉर्ड आल्सो?
So I'm not sure I understand the double-edged sword, but उसका status ये है कि हमने ये मैटर जो है, हमें फीडबैक मिला कि इन प्रिंसिपल किसी को भी दिक्कत नहीं है कि र्यूमर वेरिफिकेशन होना चाहिए, लेकिन उसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में चैलेंजेस आते हैं और उसका कुछ अनएंटिसिपेटेड इम्पैक्ट होता है जो कि इंडस्ट्री को दिक्कत दे रहा है. तो हमने जो इंडस्ट्री स्टैंडर्ड्स फोरम हाल ही में क्रिएट किया, जिसमें तीनों इंडस्ट्री एसोसिएशन शामिल हैं, फिकी, एसोचएम, सीआईआई, और वो मिस्टर केवी कामत की चेयरमैनशिप के तहत है ये फोरम. और उस फोरम ने इस मुद्दे को उठा के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन स्टैंडर्ड्स की रिकमेंडेशन की है कि ईज ऑफ कंप्लायंस के लिए, कि अगर कंपनी को ईजिली इसके साथ कंप्लाई करना चाहिए, हमें भी वही, दैट इज आवर ऑब्जेक्टिव एज वेल, कि कंप्लायंस में दिक्कत नहीं होनी चाहिए. तो वो जो स्टैंडर्ड बन रहा है वो इंडस्ट्री ने हमें प्रपोजल दिया है. हाल ही में वो प्रपोजल हमारे पास पहुंचा है काफ़ी बातचीत हुई, हाल ही में वो प्रपोजल आया है और उसमें एक एस्पेक्ट जो है वो ऐसा है कि जो उन्होंने कहा वो मुद्दा हमने माना है कि ये सही बात है, तो उस मुद्दे को लेके हमको एक दूसरे रेगुलेशन में, इस रेगुलेशन में नहीं, एक दूसरे रेगुलेशन में थोड़ा मॉडिफिकेशन करना पड़ेगा।
प्रारूप चेंज होगा जब भविष्य में जब भी लागू होंगे तब।
सो इसलिए वो जो, इसीलिए हमने फरवरी तक डेट दी है, क्योंकि हम तब तक वो जो दूसरे रेगुलेशन में हमें थोड़ा सा चेंज लाना पड़ेगा वो हम तब तक कर लेंगे, तो फिर वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में दिक्कत नहीं आएगी इंडस्ट्री को, एंड देयर विल बी ईज ऑफ कंप्लायंस।
मैम 4-5 सवाल हैं। एक सवाल ये है नहीं मैम दिस इज बेसिक डिस्क्लोजर की 4-5 सवाल है। तो पहला ये मैम कि काफ़ी दिनों से जो चर्चा हो रही थी कि जो प्रॉप ट्रेडिंग होती है उसको लेकर के काफ़ी बात भी हुई, हम लोगों ने भी आपके सामने सवाल उठाया, तो उसके बाद क्या कुछ आपने उसको देखा है, बातचीत की है?
मुझे जरा याद दिलाएं, प्रॉप ट्रेडिंग के बारे में क्या बातचीत हुई?
प्रॉप ट्रेडिंग के तरीके बदल गए हैं, लाइक कि जो पहले ये होता था कि अब जाके सीधे ब्रोकर के थ्रू ही सौदे हो रहे हैं तो मार्जिन देने की जरूरत नहीं है, और अथराइज्ड पर्संस का मिसयूज वाला पार्ट भी उसमें
हम देख रहे हैं।
ये तो जवाब नहीं हुआ अभी।
अरे
अभी सवाल बाकी हैं, पहले मैं सवाल। दूसरा सवाल ये था मैम कि एक एक्सचेंज ने प्रपोजल दिया था कि
ये देखने लायक चीज है और हम देख रहे हैं।
ओके। दूसरा सवाल ये था मैम कि एक एक्सचेंज ने प्रपोजल दिया था कि एफ&ओ के ट्रेडिंग टाइम के एक्सटेंशन का, तो प्रपोजल आई गेस सितंबर में आया था, तो कुछ बात बढ़ी है उस पर?
उस मुद्दे पे हमने एक्सचेंज से ये बात की है कि देखिए इस पूरे इकोसिस्टम में 3 लोग हैं, एक तो एक्सचेंजेस और क्लियरिंग कॉरपोरेशंस और जो डिपॉजिटरीज हैं वही हैं, MIIs हैं, दूसरे हमारी बहुत बड़ी ब्रोकर कम्युनिटी है और उससे भी ज़्यादा हमारी इन्वेस्टर कम्युनिटी है। सो इस मुद्दे को पे पूरी चर्चा करने के लिए हमें उनका रिस्पांस भी तो चाहिए, तो एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी हमारे पास आए वो काफ़ी नहीं है, तो हमने यही बोला है, एंड इनफैक्ट आई थिंक सम ऑफ यू हैड ऑफर्ड कि आप अपने चैनल्स पे आप अपने ज़रिए से आप सर्वे करेंगे, तो हमने यही फीडबैक उन्हें दिया है कि ब्रोकर का फीडबैक और एंड इन्वेस्टर का जो फीडबैक है वो दोनों हम देखेंगे और तभी इसके ऊपर कोई डिसीजन ले पाएंगे।
एक सवाल ये था मैम कि जो फिनफ्लुएंसर्स के डिस्कशन पेपर था उसमें मैम आपने बाकी लोगों को तो इंक्लूड किया, लेकिन ये जो एफ&ओ पढ़ाने वाले हैं ये लोग इसके दायरे से बाहर मतलब रखने की वजह क्या है?
हमने तो प्रिंसिपल्स फॉलो किए हैं, हमने किसी को ऐसे पिक एंड चूज करके नहीं किया है, तो जो वो प्रिंसिपल के तहत आएंगे वो जो भी होंगे वो उधर रहेंगे।
नहीं, वो अगर पढ़ा रहे हैं और ये कह रहे हैं कि हमारी आप ट्रेडिंग स्ट्रेटजी फॉलो कीजिए और आप बहुत बड़े,
हमारे हिसाब से इट इज कवर्ड अंडर आवर कंसल्टेशन पेपर।
Ma'am, wanted your feedback on the instantaneous settlement which you had announced earlier. You said last time that it is going to be implemented in next year itself. So, ma'am, what is the progress there? Do we see some update in next 1 or 2 months as well, as you had indicated earlier?
So the progress is very good. The one change in the roadmap that has been agreed because as part of our consultation, if you recollect, we had said that we will move optionally to 1 hour settlement, and then we will move to instantaneous. Now, what the market infrastructure and the brokers together have come back and told us is that the technology path that they need to take to get to instantaneous settlement will be much better if the first step we take is not 1 hour settlement but T+0. So there is I would say in between step which has undergone a change based on the consultation. So their feedback was it will be quicker and less expensive to move to T+0 and then move to instantaneous rather than to move to 1 hour and then to instantaneous. So since that roadmap is now working out very well, we feel that the incremental benefit of inserting a 1 hour in the middle may not be there. So we'll move to T+0 and then instantaneous. The progress is very good. A lot of discussion has happened and the roadmap is pretty much agreed now.
And this will be a parallel system, or this will
parallel. It's a parallel system, completely optional, and there will be. So, for instance, I think in T+0, only non-custodian accounts. So there are some, what shall I say, categories of investors, given the way that the technology works and what is required. So there are some categories, large categories, where it will be available on an optional basis.
Does it make any of the players in the ecosystem redundant, or everybody will have a role?
No, everybody continues to have a role. Yeah. No?
Absolutely, ma'am. We are not putting anybody out of work.
I'm not sure what he's hinting at, but no, the answer is no.
Concern that brokers may not.
No, not at all.
One question on the IPO issue.
If there are no brokers, who will grow the market, bhaiya? Timeline, roughly speaking, I think for T+0 is before the end of this financial year, so meaning before March, and then another 1 year from there, instantaneous.
That if you have two parallel systems, there could be liquidity going to one segment and the other one. And most of the FPI will end up opting for T+1. In that, so are we giving FPI a separate window only to trade among themselves?
No, I think this is a very unfounded opinion. Anyone who looks at the data, and as you know, we look at the data very, very carefully, we believe that this is an unfounded fear, and for two reasons. Number one, the way in which it is structured. We believe that while it will be a different, I think we called it a different, ISIN is same, but what did we say? Some technical, yeah. So while technically we have to do all that to use the technology, but the reason that we do not see a problem in this is, number one, we have seen the cross-tab of the data of different types of investors, and that their trades are matching against what type of investors, right? So what is the assumption and the scenarios that we are painting, that if what number of which segment moves to this, what will happen? We've done that analysis. So we think this is a completely unfounded and exaggerated fear. The second, mainly because it is optional, right? So this is not that the whole segment, you can't assume 100% of all retail will move there. That's an unrealistic expectation. The second reason why we are not worried about it is because whenever you have any two segments, you will always have arbitrageurs who will come in to close the gap in case the markets start to diverge. So water will always find its level. Like you have arbitrageurs between cash and futures, you will have them between these two. So we don't see any great challenge in this, and this so-called anxiety is highly overblown. Thank you.
Will it require additional disclosures from the exchanges?
Disclosures can?
Like if you go to T+0, then we are basically saying that it's a delivery which is happening. So information of those, what percentage of the trade is now getting settled in that sense?
You will get data flow will be there for everything, but the closing price which will be taken for mark-to-market assessment will be from the T+1 market.
Ma'am, I had one question on the IPO matter. This was actually talked about in a recent conference by a SEBI official himself, that in a few inspections that were carried out from the offer by draft offer document, and some verification, some inspection was done of the physical assets of companies which were coming out with IPOs. In I don't know how many number of cases, but there was one or more instances where that physical asset did not exist. So supposing there was an office listed in it.
So I'm surprised because I'm surprised SEBI does not do any physical inspections of to be listed companies, so I don't know what is being referred to.
I'm not sure who did it, but if we get a complaint and if it is credible and there is something that we need to go and see, then perhaps we will do it.
This was in the context of SEBI telling the investment banker ki boss, please check please check the companies that you're bringing in, ki their assets are existing or not. So in that regard, I think SEBI may have carried out some.
So what's the question?
Question is this for real? Is this a cause for concern?
I'm saying, a cause for concern arises when there's a rampant practice. If this is a one-off, then we will deal with it in an enforcement manner, that's all. If somebody has lied in the document, then there are consequences of lying on the document. So if we receive a complaint and we examine it and there has been false statements made in the prospectus, we will deal with it as enforcement.
Thank you.
As most of the major questions have been asked, one good thing on the SME side, recently exchanges are also said that they have reviewed the norms for taking them on the main board, migration to the main board, and also GSM has also been is also being implemented along with STASM. So any other, because these are already on all the SMEs which have already come up and are listed. Anything to keep a check on the IPOs, and from that side, what is the status there?
So I think we are very encouraged, very frankly. So from the 1st of January till today, there have been 158 SME IPOs. They've raised in excess of 4,000 crores. And they've come from multiple states. They've come from multiple industries. So in a way, you can say that it's very heartening. Yes, we have seen this oversubscription and so on and so forth. We will examine in case, there is too much risk building up in the system in any particular way.
So just wanted to understand about how many sandbox applications are due with SEBI?
Innovation sandbox.
Sandbox innovation application.
How many applications?
Sorry, we don't know offhand. Sorry, don't know.
मैम एक क्लेरिफिकेशन था, आई थिंक मैंने मिस किया शायद। रीड्स MSM रीड्स के बारे में आपने ये कहा कि जो एग्जिस्टिंग प्लेटफॉर्म जो चला रहे हैं तो वो उनको वाइंड अप नहीं करना होगा, जैसा कि डिस्कशन पेपर में कहा गया था।
अगर उनको हमारे तहत आना है तो जो भी वो कर रहे हैं वो हमारे तहत होना चाहिए। ये नहीं हो सकता कि हम आधा काम रेगुलेटेड कर रहे हैं, आधा अनरेगुलेटेड कर रहे हैं। लेकिन अगर आपको आना ही नहीं है और आप जो अभी कंपनी के तौर पे आप लोग चला रहे हैं फ्रैक्शनल ओनरशिप, उसमें फिर आपको चलाना है, आप चलाइए। लेकिन अगर आपको आना है तो फिर आपको नेसेसरीली सब कुछ इधर लाना पड़ेगा, रीट के अंदर लाना पड़ेगा। और वो जो एक टैक्स का बेनिफिट होता है जो कि ओरिजिनली जो हमारे बड़े रीट्स थे उनमें भी यही फैसिलिटी दी गई थी, दैट देयर इज नो टैक्स इम्प्लीकेशन ऑन द इन्वेस्टर, वही बेनिफिट इनको भी दिया जाएगा। लेकिन आप आए तो पूरी तरह आए, आधे नहीं आ सकते।
तो मतलब ये मैंडेटरी होने की कंडीशन नहीं होगी कि उनको मैंडेटरी आना ही पड़ेगा?
नहीं। Sorry.
Just to add to,
I have one question.
Just one. Yes, Anuj.
शुरू में सवाल पूछा था ना कि इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए कुछ और प्रोडक्ट्स हैं क्या, तो ये रीट्स का जो है ये थोड़ा रेगुलेटेड रीट्स का बास्केट एक्सपैंड होगा, तो उससे भी एक इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं क्रिएट होती है।
बट एक जो इशू है मैं देखता हूँ रीट्स के लिए प्रमोशन ऐसा नहीं होता है, तो आई थिंक मतलब क्या वजह है, या तो शायद रीट्स के जो इशूअर्स हैं वो उतना प्रमोशन नहीं करते हैं या जो भी है।
We need to expand the basket, तो एक थोड़ा और लिस्टिंग्स होंगी तो अवेयरनेस बढ़ेगी, फिर it has its own cycle. So
one question, ma'am. They were on the direction of the Finance Ministry, I believe. 16 working groups have been formed for ease of doing business. What exactly are the pain points or such identified points which are being looked at on those specific 16 working groups?
So, first of all, that is correct. And not only those working groups in terms of those representatives, who are in those committees, but public suggestions have also been sought for each of those working groups to look at. And I think the last date for that was November 6th. So, those results, those inputs have come. I think it's a little early days right now to comment, because as you can imagine, this is so diverse and literally hundreds of things come in and we have to analyze and see. And there are 16 different, as you know, they're very diverse, right? I mean, they're just completely diverse in terms of their coverage. So it's early days yet to reach a conclusion on where that is headed. But it's a very active group, and they are certainly looking at very many aspects.
Last question on the fractional shares, not fractional ownership this part, but fractional shares issuance, which was being discussed with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And what is the, how can we understand that at this stage?
We don't know the current status, but as I said, we've had very positive discussions with them, but we don't know the current status.
मैम एक सवाल ये था कि जो बेसिक सर्विस डीमैट अकाउंट की फैसिलिटी है 2 लाख की लिमिट, वो 2012 में तय हुई थी. उसके बाद से अगर देखें तो इंडेक्सेस ऑलमोस्ट क्लोज टू 4 टाइम्स बढ़ चुके हैं. तो उसको रिव्यू करने की कोई इरादा है उसको?
देखा जा सकता है. ऑफ कोर्स कॉस्ट को भी फिर इन्फ्लेशन करना पड़ेगा, एडजस्टमेंट. सो आई थिंक बोथ थिंग्स.
There are proposals which have come up making exactly the point that you've made, and they will be considered. So the point that Chairperson made about cost also has to be seen.
Cost also, inflation has to be seen, and the movement of the market and the mark to market also should be seen. It's an interesting thought.
मैम आईपीओ की लिमिट के लिए भी क्या थॉट है इस पर?
लिमिट?
आईपीओ की लिमिट, रिटेल आईपीओ की
वो
लिमिट
तो बात हो चुकी. Which survey?
There was one survey which you were intraday.
That is very, very early stages, like I mentioned. It has to be peer reviewed like the option data which came out before we come out with any kind of numbers or indications whatsoever. So please hold your horses.
T+3 will become mandatory next week for IPOs. So, are we...
What is the current, do we know, sir, what is the data, the people who are running it right now, were they doing T+3?
I mean, a lot of issues have done, but they have used holidays.
All have done T+3?
But it's not pure T+3 in that sense.
अच्छा, छुट्टियां थी बीच में.
हाँ, छुट्टियां लेके, so pure T+3 अभी तक एक भी नहीं हुआ है. So are we on track to sort of make it mandatory?
We have not heard otherwise from any of the constituents to say कि दिक्कत होगी, right, Mr. Bhatt? We have not heard any.
In fact, एक ने तो T+2 भी किया.
हाँ, but वो holidays.
ठीक है.
For instance, if an issue closes on Wednesday, then are we prepared to list on say Friday? I mean, that has not happened. Issue closing.
No, so as I said, we have not heard from any of the stakeholders that there is any challenge, and usually, you know, as we approach the mandatory timeline, usually if anybody has a problem, they make a beeline to us. So no news is good news. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for being here on a Saturday.
बंद करो माँ.